Things have been going great for independent animation recently, which is awesome considering the state of animation coming from the mainstream industry, with companies like Warner Bros. Discovery slashing cartoons, including ones that are near finished or actually complete, and the rest of the industry basically looking down on animation, seeing it as just kid stuff, and not even acknowledging it as a medium and instead writing it off as a genre. Even companies that built their business on animation like Disney, despite Walt's sentiment since he knew better. This was outright stated by Bob Chapek, the former CEO of Disney, and even though he's been replaced, it feels like the company as a whole agrees with that statement. They often disparage their past works, typically to prop up their live-action remakes, which are meant to be for a general audience instead of for children. It's a sentiment the Oscars have routinely expressed as well, and when we do get great animated films, it usually doesn't get the recognition it deserves.
Animated films make up some of our most formative movie experiences as kids.
So many kids watch these movies over and over
and over and over and over and over and over.
I see some parents out there know exactly what we're talking about.
Hollywood has a tendency to over-rely on sequels, reboots, and remakes, to the point where they even run beloved franchises into the ground. Of course, companies want to turn a profit, so to do that, they try to stick with safer options, or at least what they perceive as safer options, to the point where movies that are technically new properties feels like we've seen this before since it relies on familiar tropes. Meanwhile, TV animation also has a stigma against it.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah. It's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
And mature content is usually relegated to raunchy adult comedies that have an over-reliance on just saying something crude rather than actually telling a joke, or being a Family Guy clone. So it's refreshing to get quality alternatives, especially from independent creators. It's pretty amazing to see what people can accomplish even without large studio backing. One of these animations that I want to cover is Lackadaisy, an independent pilot that recently premiered on YouTube. It takes place in 1927 in a world of anthropomorphic cats. Them being cats doesn't really affect the plot at all, but it's adorable, and it gives the characters a lot of personality and lets them be more expressive due to the way their tails and ears move, and I love it when they actually act like cats or make cat noises. It would be great to see Cats the musical in this style, instead of that awful movie we got, but you know, one dream at a time. The animation is very fluid and expressive, and it's reminiscent of Xerox animation, because there are times when the original sketch lines are still visible, which gives the animation a rougher and unpolished look, but there's a charm to it. The background and set pieces are amazing, with so much atmosphere, and the 1920s backdrop really adds to the ambiance. My favorite part has to be the opening where Rocky serenades the Mississippi River. The way the golden light contrasts with the navy blue of the night sky is visually stunning. The Art Deco pattern that frames the city and the river, the particle effects coming off of Rocky's violin as he plays, all culminates in a magical scene, and a great way to introduce the world. I also appreciate that the script incorporated actual slang from that time period into the dialogue. It makes it feel more authentic to the time period, which can sometimes be an issue when it comes to period pieces. The music also really lends itself to the time period and adds to the ambiance. It's a mix of jazz and swing, which were popular genres at that time. There are some modern influences, like when they embellish the music with some modern beats, but I think it adds to the ambiance instead of distracts from it. They also utilize the music really well, like choosing to not incorporate it at all in certain scenes, which adds to the tension. It all comes together to create such a vibrant and interesting world, and you can tell a lot of love and passion went into this project. The story revolves around the Lackadaisy Speakeasy, which is hidden under the Little Daisy Cafe. They used to be a thriving business, but have struggled ever since their founder, Atlas May, was killed. They've been trying to pick up the pieces and get back to where they were before, but that can be very dangerous in this line of work, and have to face deadly rivals with the likes of the Marigold Gang, who seem to enjoy the hunt to a concerning degree. And to make things worse, one of their own, Mordecai, has abandoned Lackadaisy to join the competition, and is now hunting them down. The pilot gets straight into the action, and mostly relies on character interactions to give us context of who these characters are and their relationship to each other, like Rocky calling Freckle cousin, or commenting on how he's trying to impress Ivy, which I prefer to something like exposition dumps, but I would have liked it if they had played into that more, like when it's revealed that Mordecai is there and he's actively trying to kill them, but the main trio doesn't comment on it at all. The trio consists of Rocky, a musician with an excess of manic energy, his cousin Freckle, who often gets dragged into these hijinks, but has a dark side, and Ivy Pepper, a plucky and resourceful girl who can fix cars despite allegedly never learning how to drive one. And and I think it would have been nice if they could have acknowledged Mordecai. After all, they used to argue over breakfast, and now they're shooting at each other. Granted, Mordecai did pull a gun at breakfast, but this time he's actually shooting it. Mordecai also actively shoots at the boys, even almost headshotting Freckle, but he refrains from shooting at Ivy, even though he had a clear shot. It's clear they each have a unique dynamic that would have been interesting to explore, even if they were brief exchanges. One scene I think accomplishes this well is the scene where Mitzi is talking to the portrait of her deceased husband. Even though she is expositing, the dialogue feels and sounds genuine, and she never says something like "as you know," which is a clear indicator of when a character is expositing, but we can tell by her dialogue that she's mourning the loss of someone very close to her. This scene also nicely contrasts the opening scene with Rocky, as the environment reflects both of their views. The bright lights are replaced with a somber atmosphere, and the sky is a much darker color, as she laments the loss of the good old days, accentuated when the trio return with their banged up car, a comic emphasis on the current state of affairs at Lackadaisy. But back to the trio and getting the car destroyed, I don't think Mordecai's assessment of the situation at the end was fair at all. The trouble starts when Marigold figures out that their supplier is double dealing with other speakeasies, so they go after the competition, which happens to be the Lackadaisy cats, making things kind of awkward given their history. But Mordecai also feels that Rocky and the others are clumsy and reckless, which could jeopardize the entire bootlegging operation in St. Louis if they manage to get the feds on their tails. But honestly, Marigold was way more reckless here. All Lackadaisy did was dig up a phony grave, since the coffin was just full of Canadian whiskey, and while they probably could have been more discreet, they weren't being that obvious. But as soon as Marigold showed up, Seraphine started shooting wildly. She's clearly the kind of cat who likes to play with her prey, but she and her brother Nico enjoy the chase. So instead of just killing them immediately, there's this giant shootout and dramatic car chase. They're gonna wake up all of St. Louis at this rate. This culminates at the quarry, where Rocky finds heavy machinery and dynamite, and proceeds to blow up the quarry, which wasn't discreet at all. But first of all, Marigold started it, and secondly, being discreet is clearly out the window at this point. They were firing wildly at Lackadaisy. What were they supposed to do? Mordecai is very calculated and no nonsense, but he puts up with Marigold's nonsense. For as much as Lackadaisy might not be his scene, it doesn't seem Marigold is a good fit either. Just saying. While the contrast between Nico and Seraphine and Mordecai is very entertaining, I'm kind of surprised Mordecai would go on a mission with them. He seems more like a solo act, and all they do is make fun of how boring they find him. It's a shame they went through all that trouble only for the booze to end up being bad, but at least they're alive. Overall, it was a great pilot, and I hope we can see more of this series in the future. I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's great to see independent projects come together. I don't know if we would see a series like this from the mainstream media as it is, because of their heavy reliance on already established properties. Even Puss in Boots 2: The Last Wish, which is an amazing movie, was tied to an already existing franchise. Plus, when it comes to quality, Puss in Boots 2 seemed more like an exception than the rule. So this was a real treat, especially after sitting through the entirety of Velma. Pretty much everything came together so well. The animation, the voice acting, the music, the cast and crew working from home during the pandemic from all over the world. It's all really inspiring, and they really delivered such a beautiful piece of media. So those are my thoughts on Lackadaisy. Have you seen the pilot? And what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to LewisBa295418885 on Twitter for doing this cute fan art of us. It's adorable, and we really appreciate it. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsors: Stutania, Tyrant Carnivore, Adam K, Shiny Orc Boy, The Rabbit Mancer, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JBR, Hussyman42, Nixel, Phil C, Taylor Ramirez, Caleb Nelson, Bandito Bane, Dakari the Professor, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Garcia XV Legend, Hunter Rose, Dash Hound, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Miranda Sinistra, Butcher7 Actual, Felix Bam, Soundboy00, Owen Wildish, Player Zero, Kitsune Fiora, Airplanes in the Night Sky, Ninja Rex, Lucas Geist, and Lil. Thank you all so much for your support, and if you'd like to support the channel as a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button, and if you enjoyed this content, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.